Hello, crypto aficionados, and we got your weekend update of crypto news. So, Coinbase is trying to issue an ultimatum to the SEC. I think this comes in the wake of many legal victories against the SEC. They have a rulemaking petition that they want the SEC to give a good response to. Obviously, the SEC is not in the business of giving good responses, so they're trying to force the issue. And I think the courts are not going to look kindly on the SEC now because they don't favor the SEC. So this is actually very interesting for Coinbase. So basically, Coinbase has put the SEC on notice, and they want a clear response. So they've been seeking a clear response since July of 2022. It's been over a year, so it's kind of ridiculous that the SEC has not given a response. And of course, the latest response is not good enough, and it's just bureaucratic BS, which is what the SEC is really good at. And they called for a mandamus to actually, within 30 days, to compel the SEC to file a good and reasonable response. Of course, the SEC is afraid of these things, so they don't really have any good or reasonable responses. Coinbase wants clear, concise regulations, which the SEC has not given. Of course, they basically had submitted a status update on the 12th of October, but it was vague, stating that the commission staff provided a recommendation without further details. A recommendation on what? Well, we're not really sure. So basically, after months of waiting for a response, so Coinbase has filed a petition seeking a definitive yes or no, and this is regarding certain questions within the Coinbase business, which the SEC refuses the answer because it knows it would put it in a hard spot. So basically, the response from Coinbase criticizes the SEC, which they should be criticized, and suggesting that it was nothing more than bureaucratic BS, and the SEC had resolved not to conduct the requested rulemaking. So basically, the SEC does not want to give a solid answer because that would leave it open to lawsuits. And the SEC's record in court lately has not been favorable to it, so it probably doesn't want to get sued again. And of course, the SEC has opposed Coinbase's efforts, and they've requested additional time. And the last time they requested additional time, they were granted additional time, 120 days. But that means they have to make a response by end of October or early November. So they're coming up again. It's due. Their time has come, and they must give a response, but they haven't really given a good one in terms of Coinbase staking and all other aspects of Coinbase business and the clear crypto regulations that the entire industry wants, but that the SEC cannot give. Obviously, the SEC is encumbered by its losses on other fronts, both against Ripple and against Grayscale, so it probably doesn't want to take too many things to court because its record in court has not been so great. So Coinbase basically has the SEC by the balls, and they are applying pressure at this point. And I think the SEC is eventually going to crack. There is a Chinese crypto mine in Wyoming for some reason, and authorities are alarmed that it might be a spy base for China. Now, this could or could not be true that it's actually being used as a spy base for China. Depends what rigs are in the base. So obviously China doesn't really allow Bitcoin mining because of environmental reasons. So many of these Bitcoin miners have actually moved to the United States, which doesn't have such troublesome regulations. China needs to use its pollution quotient to actually power other things within its economy. So obviously, because of the Chinese company doing a lot of computational stuff in the United States, there have been questions raised about it. And, it was only recently discovered that it was owned by China. Obviously, there is other uproar about a crypto mining operation that's owned by Saudi Arabia that's also in the United States. It's probably been operating for a while, and people have not noticed that it was Chinese or from Saudi Arabia. The operation has caught the attention of U.S. authorities who fear it may provide an opportunity for the Chinese government to engage in full-spectrum intelligence collecting operations. That also might be true, but I think there's an 80% chance that it was just a bunch of Chinese businessmen that want to actually make money, and since they can't do it in China, they're going to move here in the United States and try to do it. But I think if that's true, they should be subject to harsh taxes because we want to tax those foreign companies and make some money off of them. And plus, there is like national security concerns, so they could just ban this operation altogether. So like the crypto mining operation in question was brought to the US government's attention when his team at Microsoft submitted a report to the Committee on Foreign Investment in August 2022. Obviously, a lot of foreign investment in the mining. Of course, the team expressed concerns that the operation had potential to collect sensitive information from the data center in Cheyenne, which plays a pivotal role in supporting the operational needs of the Pentagon. So there is U.S. military concerns involved, and obviously that's why the government is involved, and that's why the government doesn't like this mine. So the Wyoming-based mine has raised eyebrows from Finbold because it's a proximity to the Francis E. Warren Air Force Base. And we know that China has used things like this before to spy on the United States for military secrets. The operation is linked to 5 companies, one of which, Bit Origin, was previously registered as a pork processing company in the Cayman Islands. A lot of shady stuff going on there. And of course, the CEO is going to dismiss these, but I don't really know if I would really trust that. Notably, the latest concerns come after a previous report filed that military officials had identified Chinese malware capable of disrupting power, water, and communication systems. A lot of these companies are probably tied to the Chinese government, so there is legitimate concern. So like Chinese mining companies, they should be predominantly American mining companies. And you know what? The Chinese government will actually support these companies at a loss as long as it can collect intelligence data as long as they're able to. So there is legitimate concern, and they should be well, they shouldn't be nationalized. That's the wrong word to it. But they should be taken over by American companies, private American companies, for purposes of security and freedom, of course. And obviously, like a big Chinese tech company in the United States that can spy on U.S. military secrets does actually need to be heavily supervised for national security reasons, and that's no joke. Apple is losing the anti-crypto fight. Now, they seemingly removed MetaMask from their App Store for a while, and then they reinstated it. And remember, Android has actually allowed crypto in games, whereas Apple has not, because allowing crypto in games would allow a way around their ecosystem wall, and they would not be able to collect that awesome 30% that they collect in terms of microtransactions, and Apple doesn't like that. But since Android has allowed it, I think if all the game developers of mobile, like GFAL and others, actually all move to Android, I think Apple will be forced to change courses. Because if there's a whole cache of games that's on Android that's not on iPhone, I think that will give Android a competitive advantage. I mean, Android already has more users than Apple, but the users of Apple per user actually are worth a lot more than the users of Android because they just have more money. I guess they're upscale, whatever. But there are more people that use Android. But if the market share and the App Store starts to favor Android because people are using crypto in Android apps and not in Apple apps because they don't allow it, I think Apple will be forced to change course because like they are very competitive against each other in the smartphone scene. And obviously the app environment has a lot to do with which platform people choose. So if people have like their favorite games, new favorite games that do involve crypto and they're only on one platform and not the other, they're going to choose that platform. And if Apple sees market share declining because of that, even a little bit, they will actually change course. So I think game developers in crypto can band together and really force Apple's hand. Apple is very, very lucrative. The App Store is extremely lucrative, and we need a way to access it. And right now, there is no way to access it right now, at least officially. I'm sure you can make like apps without the App Store, but realistically, without the App Store, they're really not going to go anywhere. So, that's something that we need to think about. If you are a crypto game developer, probably like start developing for the Android market instead because the Apple doesn't allow you. And Android's still a very, very big market. And if enough of you start making good apps on Android and that there aren't on Apple, well then, those Apple is going to change its policy because it's going to lose out on market share. And last of all, we have news on Sam Bankman-Fried. His lawyers are trying to use the affluenza defense, which is a completely BS defense, made up disease that affects rich, affluent people. I do remember the first time this was used was during like a college case where this rich dude basically like raped an unconscious woman, and then he was on the swim team, I think. And then the lawyers were like, he suffers from affluenza. It's not his fault. I was like, what the hell is affluenza? Being rich isn't a disease, my friend. That's not a good excuse. I think he did get a reduced sentence. But the thing is, it should not work. That should have never worked in the first place, and it should not work on Sam Bankman-Fried, who cost investors billions of dollars. So the thing is, like, they have a bunch of witnesses. I think SBF's lawyers realize that they can't actually win the case. I don't know if SBF's come to that realization yet, but SBF's lawyers have come to the conclusion that they cannot win the case. So they're obviously making up this excuse to try to reduce the sentence. But affluenza should never be a sentence, okay? This is a nonsense defense. So essentially, like, there is no reasonable doubt that SBF was actually guilty in all of this. But trying to reduce the sentence because of some BS stuff you made up like affluenza should not work in this case or in any case. But this man-child defense, my gosh, if you're 30 years old, that should not be a defense at all. So that's the news for today. Let me know what you think. Like and subscribe, hit that bell notifications button. Thank you and have a nice day.